Finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Doc Tales with Cocktails with your hosts, Doctors Tim and May Hindmarsh, the BS Free MD podcast program. Got some great tales, stories, news, and fun facts and crap of the week, I guess Tim's compiled together. What do you got for us?
Nothing really changes. That's number one. I am going to take a completely different historical view of what happened this last week. So this show will be aired on Monday, whatever that is, the 20th or something of July. So last weekend with President Trump's near fatal assassination attempt, I'm going to take a completely different historical tract. I was thinking about how everyone freaks out about how this is unprecedented. This has never happened. Guess what? It's happened a whole bunch of times. So I'm going to try to de-fear porn the world by talking about the father of Christian contemporary music, the one and only Larry Norman. So that is what we're going to do there. And then we're going to talk about how science is used in marketing in a segment I call Safe and Effective. And then the greatest meme I've seen in probably the last year in this week's meme of the week.
Love it. Love it. And of course, this week's cocktail of the week, which we can't forget, which I think you'll slip that in appropriately with the right story.
Yes, it'll be part of the Larry Norman story, which I cannot wait to tell. I've wanted to do it for such a long time.
You gave it away. Well, anyway, cheers. All right.
Let's get going with Nothing Really Changes. Okay, so the reason I picked this name, Nothing Really Changes, is there is this guy, the father of Christian music. His name was Larry Norman, or contemporary Christian music. And you have to understand, okay, so here's this guy with shock white hair like Edgar Winters, and was a total hippie. Like he literally was in this band called People, which was this psychedelic band back in the 60s. And then he had this profound Christian experience with the Holy Spirit and like became a street preacher, moved to Los Angeles from the Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco and started street preaching. And meanwhile, working for Capitol Records, tuning up various other artists' work. It was really kind of a crazy tale. But at any rate, then he gets into writing his own stuff and puts out his very first album, Upon This Rock, in 1969. And he has a song on there called Nothing Really Changes. And in this song, he talks about what would happen if people traveled from the past to the future. You know, would Samson shave with Gillette? Would Cain kill Abel with a bayonet? My personal favorite was, would Aristotle be an acid head? And would Ben-Hur drive a blue Corvette? I mean, this kind of crazy sort of, and it got me thinking about this week and how people are like, we live in unprecedented times. This is the most important election of our lifetimes and all that. And that may all be true. But at the same time, nothing really changes. Like, let's be honest. We have to be careful and we have to learn history and we have to understand that this stuff is cyclical. So back in 1914, when Prince Sip killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the world burnt down, it burnt down for a reason because of stupid foreign policy and incredibly arrogant central powers in Europe. And we're kind of in that same place now. And now we have this near assassination attempt and this election season. And there's reasons to fight for what you believe in and to be concerned, but it's all happened before. So take a deep breath.
Oh, I know it. I'm just thinking, as I always say, if you lived through World War II, how could you not think that was like the end of the world or end times? But but even, the JFK assassination, the MLK, like the rioting, all that stuff. I don't know. There's always events in history that really have to make people feel like the world is coming to an end, and someday it will, but nobody knows the time, the place. You can't predict that. And so, I don't know. It's up, it's down. It's a roller coaster that we live in. And yeah, things can definitely get a lot worse. But this whole thing of people freaking out about it's the end times because here we are. Well, I think that's kind of an arrogant approach.
Well, yeah, because we only know history that happened in the last 5 days. But if you look at 1968, I think politically, 1968 was far worse than what's going on right now. They killed MLK, and then they killed RFK. Mm-hmm. That was the same year. I mean, he was killed in the meeting hall of the Democratic National, Convention. Like, can you imagine? Like, literally, the convention's going on. He's walking around on the convention floor and he gets killed. Like, that one is just a complete mind blower. And then MLK, the fact that they didn't burn the entire country down when MLK was assassinated tells you something about the difference between the political activations of the civil rights people back in 1968 versus BLM, which I think is largely terrorism, but that's for a different conversation. But, so we're going through strange times. The only thing I think that alters the paradigm now that really does make it different is the fact of social media, cell phones, and potentially AI coming. Because like you look at the Zapruder film, right? It's like one crappy wind up 8mm recording that has been dissected 19 million times from Sunday. And it's one video. It's one video that actually shows the assassination of JFK. And you compare that to what happened, in the last several days with Trump, and there is literally hours of cell phone coverage of every angle of the shooter laying down, of people yelling, of like and it's just, it's going to be crazy to see how this unwinds. Like I've been reading a lot on it. I'm not going to comment specifically because that's not really my jam, but I think the other side of this is, especially for our Christian listeners, like you got to take a big, fat, deep breath and understand if God's on the throne, he's on the throne. And yes, be responsible, fight for what you believe in. But ultimately, fear is not part of what we're supposed to be part of. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
I think people are a little scarred from the last 4 years. And I don't know. I think non-trusting, fearful, all that kind of stuff.
But that's
a good emotion.
But that's the case. I mean, I'm going to do a talk in a couple weeks, and I'm going to talk about that. I mean, people are fearful because of what happened in the last 4 years. The problem is what happened in the last 4 years has been happening for the last 44 years. The only reason they're fearful now is because they see it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like one of my best friends who is in a wonderful marriage. He's happier than he's ever been in his entire life. And his first marriage crashed and burned at 23 years because he finally figured out that, his wife finally confessed that she was sleeping around. Well, that had been going on for decades. So the corruption in that relationship was there for decades. The realization was unbelievably painful, but that painful realization is what allowed the rebirth of another relationship that was immeasurably and unbelievably better than the first. And so that's where we are. We're at the point now where we understand that all these people that we were supposed to trust have been cheating on us, but they haven't been cheating on us for the last 6 months. They've been cheating on us for the last 65 years. And we finally realized it and we're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. We're being cheated on. Yeah, but it's not new. The only thing that's new is now you understand. And now that you understand, you have a responsibility to act on that understanding and make a better life and a better relationship and divorce these assholes that are cheating on you. That's the reality. let's get back to Larry because he makes me super happy.
Let's.
So let's see here. Do we have the picture of Larry with President Carter? That one's, yeah. So President Carter, who was a Sunday school teacher, had this old time gospel hoedown whatever thing on the Rose Garden lawn and decided to invite Larry Norman. And I just love that picture because Larry Norman, who if you listen to his music, was clearly a liberal, clearly a leftist hippie from that day, but ultimately a servant of Christ more than anything else. He's still looking at Carter like, dude, I think this guy's entirely full of crap.
It looks, I don't know. I think the look on his face is like he's not sure. It's kind of, he's got the furrowed brow there, and it's kind of like thinking deeply. He's not sure. Very pensive look. Yes.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's pretty crazy. So, back to the Larry Norman story because it's so like this guy. I heard there's an author who wrote a book called "Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music," which is in reference to one of Larry Norman's songs, and it's a tremendous biography. He calls this guy the Forrest Gump of evangelical American Christianity because he was there for everything. Okay. So in 1972, they put on this gigantic, it was like Christian Woodstock festival. It's called Explo 72. And Larry was the headliner. And apparently at that show, Mike Pence became a Christian.
Wow.
And then fast forward several years later, Larry wants to start a church for artists in LA. And so he starts the Vineyard Church in his apartment in Los Angeles, which then blows up. John Wimber comes in, takes it over, and it blows up and it becomes this international, denomination. That was Larry Norman. And so
I thought we were going to go down the docs, talk rock, even the Christian side of rock, and you were going to throw out some medical facts about Larry Norman.
We'll get to Larry Norman's medical facts because they're incredibly pertinent. And it's the only reason why I was able to have a pilgrimage to his grave, which we'll get to in a second.
I think we need to talk about that.
We will. But first, I would really like to listen to the song, watch the video of the song Look Into Jesus, because this was actually played, at least in part, on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was tripping because he's like, this is really, really good. Because Larry was a tremendously gifted writer. So if we can get that video, that would be cool.
Sipping whiskey from a paper cup, you drown your sorrows till you can't stand up. And take a look at what you've done to yourself. Why don't you put the bottle back on the shelf? Yellow fingered from your cigarettes, your hands are shaking while your body sweats. Why don't you look into Jesus? He got the answer. Gonorrhea on Valentine's Day, and you're still looking for the perfect play. You think rock and roll will set you free, honey? You'd be dead before you're 33. Shoot.
Okay, so
I never realized he threw in that VD really quickly after Valentine's Day until I saw the lyrics up there because he says it so fast. That's perfect. Perfect Valentine's Day. VD. So
you got to remember this song was released in 1972, and if you were raised in the kind of family I was raised, which was a hyper-conservative, fundamentalist, evangelical home, which was a great home, but every family has its issues.
To each his own.
Correct. So, we couldn't say the word fart without getting our mouth washed out with soap. So somehow my parents have.
And look where you've come now.
Gravely failed. Yes. So you have to understand this. So this is Larry is selling this music to the children of the greatest generation, right? The people that stormed the beaches of Normandy, to these baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And he is singing in 1972 to church kids, Gonorrhea on Valentine's Day, you're still looking for the perfect lay. Why don't you look into Jesus? He's got the answer. And heads were blowing up like shrapnel of skulls.
Well, I'm thinking good for him, because if your little tight-knit circle isn't going to teach you about the real world, not like it wasn't happening, people getting gonorrhea on Valentine's Day, then maybe if you had to get some of your sex ed through music, so be it.
Well, the reality was he wasn't singing to a market. He was singing to the world he lived in. And the world he lived in was that world.
No, I get it. But, good for him for being bold and just being honest and pushing the boundaries of.
So for those of you not watching, that video is all Janis Joplin. It's all pictures of Janis Joplin. And there's a reason for that. He wrote Look Into Jesus for Janis Joplin. And like, it's so profoundly moving to think of how much he cared. Because here he is in this band, the psychedelic band People, standing backstage after he's opened for Janis Joplin, watching her, where she can't perform unless she has a paper cup of Southern Comfort at the bottom of the mic. So that's the sipping whiskey from a paper cup, was Janis getting ready to sing.
Wow.
And then, of course, they all smoked like crazy. So the yellow fingers. And then the gonorrhea on Valentine's Day, she would literally take men behind the stage and have sex with them in her bathroom, like over and over again.
Wow, I wonder, did she ever speak out about that being addressed to her? It seems very effacing. So I wonder what.
Well, I don't think it was never out in the open. It was never out in the open at that time. Like, I never knew that was about Janis Joplin until decades later.
Oh, okay.
So I think she was long since passed away
when they really said who it was about.
I don't think he ever said.
In the circles must have known who it was.
I don't think he ever said anything about what it was about until probably they started looking even into his biographical notes when they started, after Larry passed, which was in 2008.
Okay.
But it's clearly about Janis Joplin. And so that's why we are drinking, at least I am, Southern Comfort in honor of sipping whiskey through a paper cup.
Where's your paper cup?
Well, I ran out of time and couldn't get paper cups. And I'm so sick of going to hotels and drinking whiskey out of paper cups. I'm done.
Okay. So cheers to you, because that awful looking stuff is not what's in my glass.
So to Larry and Janis.
And all the Italians out there, I got my little limoncello because I was not going to drink whiskey.
This Southern Comfort has so much sugar in it, though. It's not really drinking whiskey. It's not really fair. Man, I am having earbud issues tonight. I look like a complete schmuck. I look like Hannity at the RNC when his ear... I lost my earbud. I lost my ear pierce.
Oh,
they can't tell me what to say now.
Did he lose his earbud?
Yeah, he lost his earpiece. Panic ensued. So let's go to the next song selection. And it goes about, we'll listen to probably 3 minutes of this because it's so good and I want to dissect the living heck out of it. It's a song called Reader's Digest. And it is absolutely prophetic, and it makes me think about what's going on in today's world. So we can go with Reader's Digest.
Alice is a drag queen, boys somewhere in between. Other bands are looking mean. Me, I'm trying to stay clean. I don't dig the radio, I hate what the charts pick. Rock and roll may not be dead, but it's getting sick. All over the world, disc jockeys talk the same. And every town I play is like the one from where I came. The Rolling Stones are us. We need a solution. We need salvation. Let's send some people to the moon and gather information. They brought back a big bag of rocks. Only cost $13 billion. Must be nice rocks.
Wow, so much, man. Now you're making me get all teary. So much packed into that song. It's not very long.
It's 3.5 minutes.
So much packed into that. I know you're going to get into it, prophetic and wise, and just speaks to the human condition, like in your face. That's an amazing
He
song.
literally picked up a Reader's Digest in 1972, 52 years ago, and just wrote the song. And I mean, I have such a deeply emotional commitment to this guy because this is what I grew up with, like literally from the time I was in started elementary school, like in 1971. And then, seeing him several times and taking my first girlfriend to a Larry Norman show in 1981, and it was completely acoustic, and the guy could still blow your mind with nothing. And he didn't even play steel string guitars. He played these crappy nylon string guitars when he did acoustic shows. And then you listen to that song and you go, it's 52 years old. And that line, it's 1973. I wonder who we're going to see, who's in power now. I guess I'll turn on the TV. The man on the news said China's going to beat us because we shot all our dreamers and there's no one left to lead us.
Well, nothing ever changes.
Everything remains the same. We are what we are till the day that we die, to quote Larry. Like that is...
And the only thing, honestly, I wouldn't say the only thing, but the main thing that gives me hope, like he said, is the world is not my home. I'm passing through. So you do the best you can, and you try to make it a better place for the people around you, but you can't put all your chips in.
Man, that...
because it'll frustrate the hell out of you.
That line at the end, what a mess the world is in. I wonder who began it. Don't ask me. I'm only visiting this planet. This world is, I can't even say it. Like it's so unbelievably powerful because it's absolutely true. He takes all of the political bullshit that was going on 52 years ago. He condenses it into 3 minutes. And at the end, he sums all of it up by saying, this world is not my home. I'm just passing through. So I'm still a keen observer. I'm still an outspoken participant, but ultimately, this is just a vacation in the side road of eternity, baby, because I know where my real home is. You want to talk about speaking truth. You want to talk about the transcendent power of music 52 years ago. Like I cannot believe it. Every time I listen to this, it just freaks me out.
Well, how old is the song Amazing Grace? There you go.
Yeah, I know. Written by. All right, let's get to the last couple Larry Norman pictures where his gravesite, which is pretty amazing. Here it is, Larry Norman, evangelist without a portfolio. He died at 60 years old. That is indeed a paper cup full of whiskey sitting on top of his grave because
it's Pepsi.
But it's a paper cup.
I know.
So
Wait, how did they pick Pepsi versus Coke?
My friends and I my biker friends that were all grew up in this era made a pilgrimage to Larry's grave when I was living in Oregon, because Larry ended up, again, makes sense for a medical show. Larry ended up with a cardiac cripple. He was very young in 1992. So how old would he have been in 1990? He was born in 1947. So what, 30 something. And he ended up with a heart attack that was essentially undiagnosed for, I think, almost 12 hours. He went to Cedars-Sinai in, I believe that was the hospital in LA. And they're like, oh, it can't be a heart attack. And they just kind of waited. And he ended up with profound, dilated cardiomyopathy
from it.
Yeah. And ended up essentially being a cardiac cripple.
Bad heart failure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lived for another 16 years, but just died a very slow, miserable cardiac death, and essentially bankrupted from what I can tell.
Ooh.
So he did have some foibles. He had some trouble with women. There was potentially a love child in Australia that he had fathered. No one knows that 100% for sure. He was married twice. His first wife was kind of a trip. She was a model that thought that posing in Playboy would be a way to evangelize men.
Well, it is, but maybe not in the way some people define evangelism.
Yeah, correct. And so they divorced, and then he was married again for a while, and then eventually divorced. But his second wife was amazing and was a nurse and worked in Salem, Oregon, and that's why he moved to Salem so she could care for him until he passed. And then he wanted to be on a hill buried under a tree, and I can attest after being there that that's the case. And I think we have one more picture, and this is crazy. So there is a mailbox next to his grave, and they just give away all of his CDs in there.
That's cool. I thought you were going to say it was for the collection of people writing to him.
Well, people write to him and leave it in there, and then you can just pull out free CDs. They just keep restocking it. So it's a pretty cool testimony that even, he's been gone now since 2008. He's still trying to, spread the word with his music. Again, an unbelievable writer, an unbelievable human being.
Who really has gone under the radar. Most people don't even really know much about him, right?
No, and I'll keep beating this drum because he, a lot of the contemporary Christian music artists that came after him obviously had gigantic followings because the way it emerged, but they all stand on his shoulders, in my opinion. And the other thing you have to remember is his dedication to the art was so profound. Like he's like, whether it's Christian, secular, it doesn't matter. If you're making art, it needs to be good art. It can't be crap. And he was really super picky about that. It's like, it needs to be great. And I listen to this stuff now and it blows my mind more.
Oh my gosh. I started it popped into my head. Who's that girl that was like the one hit wonder because her parents had a ton of money and she was like auto-tuned out and she was probably 16 and came up with some.
Oh, that was Friday.
Yes.
Friday. Amanda Black. Yeah. Amanda Black.
That popped into my head right away as the first. Oh, poor Larry would be rolling in his grave.
He would be.
Yes.
So
now that you started singing it, I'm not going to be able to get that damn tune out of my head for the rest of the day.
There was some other stuff I was going to do this week, and we're going to do one more thing. We're not going to do two more things just for because we're coming up right on half an hour, and I actually don't want to detract from the attention we took in talking about Larry Norman's life. And about how he can still minister to us now.
Come on, you just said you were going to give it away, and now you can't do that. You can't tease us like that.
You want to know? You want to go to Safe and Effective?
Let's go.
Okay, let's go to Safe and Effective. I love that one.
I love that.
I love
cigarettes and syringes shooting that up.
All right,
Are
so
those heroin needles or?
A new cigarette filter made of asbestos. You have to read this. So this is an amazing. In 1952, using the popular new medium of television, the P. Lauraland Tobacco Company sponsored quotes scientific demonstrations to show the efficacy and implied health benefits of its Kent micronet filter. The campaign also featured advertisements in medical journals. Imagine that. Cigarette ads in medical journals. I shit you not.
Of course there was.
Although the ads did not disclose the composition of micronet, the material that Laura Land touted as so safe, so effective, it has been selected to help filter the air in hospital operating rooms, and that was used to, quote, purify the air in atomic energy plants of microscopic impurities, was asbestos. This exhibit, okay, blah, blah, blah.
I remember that I remember learning that. Gosh, but didn't they still have some of that crap in the old hospitals where we did our training? Remember hearing about the asbestos filters and all that kind of garbage that went on?
Yeah, but the whole point, the thing I love is
in the cigarettes.
Yeah, the thing that's so crazy about this is that it's like, again, back to the theme of the entire show. Nothing really changes, right? Nothing really changes. Safe and effective, safe and effective. Okay, so they were taking a scientific truism that asbestos filters stuff down to the microscopic level, which is true, and they were expanding it into, therefore, it makes cigarettes safer. Completely unstudied. And they never actually went to the logical place where, is there something in the asbestos itself, or in the mRNA itself, or in the spike protein itself that might actually be dangerous, that we should actually study in actual human beings, instead of just taking little chunks of science, knitting it together into some sort of bullshit weave, and then saying safe and effective. What they did with those cigarettes is exactly what we're experiencing now.
Absolutely. In fact, down in the corner of that ad, they have the disclaimer. Of course, it didn't say that something about the Surgeon General's determined that, there it is, that cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. Yeah. From the smoke, from the asbestos, all of the
micronet filter. Micronite filter.
So, things change as we learn more, you do better. But the whole arrogance attitude of this thing is bulletproof. This is, we're 100% certain. I mean, look at where we've come from. All I have to do is, that's the perfect analogy for this whole vaccine debacle BS.
Well, and that's the thing is that, but if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, go to the entire childhood vaccine schedule. Okay, there's no question that these vaccines work. Okay, so there's no question that there's no question the measles vaccine works. If you don't have the measles vaccine, you would get lots of measles. There's no question.
But the issue is instances of severe illness from a.
But the issue is
a virus.
What are you trying to do? Like, no one ever asks the question, what are you trying to do with childhood vaccines? If your answer is
prevent them from getting measles, mumps, and rubella.
But that's not what your goal should be. Your goal should be to keep kids healthy as long as they can, with the healthiest immune system and the least amount of total disease burden. So if that means they never get measles and that drops their total disease burden, then it's worth getting that vaccine. If they get the measles vaccine and they get a neurodegenerative disorder that they're burdened with for the rest of their life, and then it can never be employed, they can never serve in the military, they can never, have normal relationships, then that's not a fair trade. And the fact is that
how nobody based all on the numbers and what's the relative risk and absolute risk and percentage that will benefit versus those that are impacted.
But it's based on an assumption. It's based on the assumption that if you get less measles, that's better for society. Well, that may be true, but it may not be true.
No, I know.
It's based on if you never get chickenpox, that's better than getting chickenpox. Well, the answer is you don't know that, because it's essentially unknowable, because you need all these parallel Earths, like Marvel universe, where you could study one Earth and do one thing and another Earth and do something else.
Well, I think we're getting to that point in time where people are finally starting to really eyes wide open.
Right. But the countervailing argument is just as important to ask, which is, it doesn't mean that no vaccines are better. It doesn't mean that.
Right.
That's the problem. People go, well, I think the vaccines may be causing, neurodegenerative diseases or autoimmune diseases. Okay. Well, that may be true. All right. But then, therefore, we should have no vaccines. No, therefore, we should figure out what works best. The idea that you go, it's like I've said this a million times. It's like sexual assault and rape are realities. They're awful and they should be punished to the full extent of the law. But because that corruption of sex exists, does not mean I'm going to stop having sex. So you have to be willing to ask the questions and go where the real science leads. And it doesn't lead to asbestos cigarettes. That I am 100% sure of.
All right. I'll smoke to that.
One last quick story. I saw this week, and I was just like, sum up the entire week with a crazy meme. So meme of the week, and I'm going to try to do this every week. Have a meme of the week.
Didn't we see this meme of the week?
Okay, here it is, kids. The Trump cat. 9 lives, bitches. So somebody pet their orange cat and put its hair on its head like a little Trump wig, and then wrote 9 lives, bitches. And I was like, that is so freaking hilarious. And that the first place I saw that was from El Gato Malo, the bad cat, the writer on Substack. I'm not sure if he is the original author. I kind of think he is, but I posted it right away. And then, I mean, all these big name people had posted it within 4 hours. And I mean, it was absolutely everywhere. El Gato, you win.
I was starting to say that. I thought I've seen that picture before, but without the 9 lives part, just like a meme saying something else. Cause I think that's been around for a while, that orange tabby with the big Donald bouffant or whatever you want to call it. But so apropos now.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful.
So that I think
that was a little music history tribute, rendezvous, and I don't know. Are you going to do some more Docs Talk Rock in the future as a segment? I think you should.
Yeah, I think we will, and I think we need to get into. I mean, the ultimate dream is to have the actual people to talk to. Obviously, Larry, we can't do that at least in this plane of reality.
No.
But
not unless you bring back Eben Alexander.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, look that name up on our podcast list and find out.
But I mean, I wanted to do a show about Larry Norman for a long time, and to take the heat off of the freak out fest that everyone's going through this last, couple weeks with all the political whatever and assassinations and conspiracies and whatever. Remember, man, nothing really changes. Everything remains the same. We are what we are until the day that we die, to quote the late, great Larry Norman. Check his stuff out. He will blow your mind, especially if you're into that kind of folky rock feel from the 70s. My goodness, the nostalgia is amazing. And if you do it whilst you enjoy some Southern comfort, it's even better, in my opinion. So until next time, cheers.
Cheers. Over and out.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD, to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.